What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Crazy for KVs RC. I'm Tim. Welcome back to my channel. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. So in the last video of this series, we're doing a tool walkthrough kind of based on your level of experience / where you're at in the hobby. So the last video kind of talked about if you just got your first car, RTR, maybe your second, possibly your third, and you're just looking to upgrade your tools. Maybe you're still using the tools that come with the vehicle, or you just started breaking stuff or doing upgrades. That video is definitely aimed at you, kind of people starting out. Good tools that'll get you by for a while, but as your collection starts to grow and your need for better tools and better efficiency during wrenching sessions grows, your tool collection should as well. So that's what this video is. If you're looking for the beginner video, I will link that here. I'm not an expert by any means. I don't work on anything for a living, mechanically. But I do have quite a bit of wrench time and quite a bit of experience with most of these tools that I'm showing you. And I've gone through the whole growth process of starting out with some basic stuff all the way to some really premium stuff, which will be in the next video. So this is going to be a little bit longer list. Therefore, the video is going to be a little bit longer, so bear with me. Got some things to walk through, kind of categorized as most urgent to the end of the video starts to bleed into more advanced level stuff that you should have in your toolbox, quote unquote. Not all of it's going to fit in a toolbox, spoiler alert. One last note, if you see my tool video or anyone else's, don't just buy what they suggest, especially with my videos. If you consider yourself a beginner in RC, don't just go out and buy everything I put on that list. That should be a guideline for tools that you need to accomplish those basic tasks. If your budget allows nicer stuff, I would definitely suggest it. You kind of get what you pay for the most part. There's definitely some marketing and stuff that comes in once you get in the higher end stuff. But if it's something you're going to use quite a bit, I would at least skip to the intermediate level if your budget allows it. So for the first portion of this video, we're going to start with electronic stuff. So the whole premise of this video is based on maybe you're getting your first kit or you're wanting to start doing electronic swaps. Possible scenario, it was for me. I bought a vehicle, I had some batteries, and the connectors didn't match up. I was like, I got to switch the battery connectors. I'd done some soldering before, taken some classes in high school. Definitely not an expert, so we'll just start out right off the bat. I suggest a soldering kit of some sort, and you can get them really affordable. This is one I got off Amazon. This is a little 60 watt soldering iron. It's got an on and off switch on the plug. It's also adjustable in temperature. Fairly small. Doesn't take up a lot of space. Even the kit. The kit comes with some other things like a solder sucker, which is something where if you get the solder hot, it's basically like a small little vacuum pump, spring loaded. You can suck the solder out, and you let it cool off, and then you shoot it back out. It comes with some tweezers. Comes with a little thing of solder. Not very high quality stuff. It also comes with some different tips. Some little bit fatter tips. They got a little bit better thermal mass on them, so you won't have to hold the heat quite as long. And like I said, it is adjustable. And it goes from 200 to 460 degrees Celsius. And I'll put that conversion down below because I can't do that off the top of my head. 9/5 plus 32. I know that. But plenty of heat for sure to melt solder. Solder usually melts in the 400 degree Fahrenheit range. But you usually want to go above that in order to get the wire hot, or the whatever metal you're soldering to hot first. You're going to want some connectors. We were talking about switching out battery connectors. I wouldn't just suggest buying the cheapest ones you find. I like XT60s and XT90s. I think they're really easy to solder as far as connectors go. I messed with like the EC5, EC3s before, and you kind of solder the bullets on, and then you have to get them into the plastic connector. And I had a heck of a time doing it. Maybe there's an easy way, but these are a lot easier. I think it's about $10 to $15, and you get 10 pairs. So you get 10 female, 10 male, and then you get 20 of the covers for the exposed wires. These are AMAS, which is like the name brand, at least in the XT60 market. They also make different ones that have screw holes on the side. So if you wanted to do like a 3D printed mount, so you don't have to hold two ends, you can just have it screwed in, plug it in, pull it out. That's an option as well. So as you're getting into electronics work, I also suggest getting some shrink tube. I'm pretty much out. I need to get more, but just get an assortment pack to start out if you want. Go to like Harbor Freight or honestly Walmart, Amazon. Pretty much all of them are going to have it, but get probably the smallest shrink tube you can find. An assortment pack is going to have some various stuff. Some of your electronics, I know Hobby Wing will usually provide you with a couple pieces of pre-cut shrink tube or heat shrink, some people call it. I like to heat shrink the wires, and then I also put the cover over on the battery connectors. But I have forgotten to put that cover on there before and just gone heat shrink, and it's just fine as long as there's no risk of a short between the positive and negative sides. While we're still on the topic of connectors, some bullet connectors are nice to have. I like to have these little 4mm bullets. These are from Castle. These are a little expensive for what you get. I think they're $5 to $6, and you get 3 pair, which is enough to do one motor for a brushless. These are nice to have. Maybe pick up a bag or two of these if you're doing some online shopping and they have some 4mm bullets. But if you don't suspect you're going to need them, or you don't need to lengthen any motor wires or shorten any motor wires, you could probably get by without it for a little bit. As you start getting into more custom stuff, maybe need some more high-powered servos. A lot of them are direct power. I know like Holmes Hobbies direct power servos, the SHV 500, 650, I think he's got an 800 as well. He does not recommend running those off of a balance plug on a battery. There's a balance plug adapter you can get, and I just get these off Amazon. This is a Line brand. This is a little JST on one end, and then it's got just regular stripped wires on the other. So when you're doing your battery connector, you can solder one of these on if you're going to run something direct power. Maybe you got some high powered headlights, but a couple of these are nice to have as well. So lastly, one of my favorite things that I've ever done, and one of the cheapest in this collection probably of tools, is this little Frankenstein. And this is a servo centering / tester from Amazon. I think I got a 4-pack of these for less than $10. And these will run on 4.8 to 6 volts. So if you know anything about batteries, AA is 1.5 volts. So I hot glued it to this 4 AA compartment with an on and off switch. And I just leave 4 AA's in there. It sits in my little toolbox that sits on the workbench here. And it has 3 different modes. So manual mode is where you can actually test it. You crank the knob, which is just a little potentiometer. You click the button once and you get neutral, which centers the servo for you. There's nothing more frustrating than working on like a really kind of tightly compact build, and you get everything in there and you're like, oh, I can't hook the servo up yet. Or maybe you forget and it's not centered. And then when you turn it on, it slams the servo one way and could potentially burn it up if you're not careful. So I like to center them all before I even put them in the truck. Just plug them in here. It's just got some prongs. You can actually test 3 at a time. I've never done that. I've just done 1 at a time. You just plug your little JST in, turn it on, click the button, go to neutral, and then turn it off, unplug it. And it does a pretty good job. It gets you pretty close. Usually your trim, plus or minus like 10 or 15 out of 100 on my radio will get me to a good center point. I just soldered the wires from this AA battery box to the connectors on this side. This is the input side. So good little practice session for you to do some soldering. And if you screw one up, you got 3 others to practice on. But there's some manufacturers that make them as well. I know Spectrum makes one. There's probably a few others. And they can be, I think $15, $20, $25. Some of them can do some other stuff as well. I think there's some that are also lipo checkers. But that's all I need this to do, so this works for me. It's definitely something I do look to upgrade or maybe try out something a little nicer, and maybe it'll do a little bit better of a job getting things perfectly centered to start out. So in the last video, the video that was for beginners, I kind of deliberated a little bit about electric screwdrivers, and I talked about some options that were really affordable, none that I had at the time. And one I was really drawn to was the Hyper Tough 4-volt, and it's got a clutch on it. It's got a 1/4 inch quick connect. It's just magnetic, and it also is adjustable grip, so you can run it in the pistol grip style or the regular standard screwdriver. Well, I had a couple of comments, quite a few actually, of people saying they had them and they loved them. So I went out and got one. I wanted to try it out. And I'm going to link here a video that I did comparing this to my old trusty Dewalt 8-volt gyro. This is kind of the gold standard, no pun intended, yellow standard. When it comes to RC electric screwdrivers. But I did a video. I tried to give it a fair shake, and I'll link it here. Like I said, you guys can go check it out. Let me know what you think. But if you hadn't got an electric screwdriver in the beginner level, you're still waiting, now is the time. And spoiler alert, this is a pretty good option. The video, I go over some pros, some cons, but if it's all your budget will allow, this is like $15. So this is money pretty well spent. It's going to save your wrists. If you're doing like a full teardown or you're doing a kit, this is a good investment, or something like this. Another pretty good option, this was actually the second one I ever bought. I had this before I had my Dewalt. This is a little Hercules 12-volt. It's got an adjustable clutch up top. It's a screwdriver. It's got quick connect. It's got a light on it. Obviously forward and reverse, 2 speeds, and it's rechargeable. Price-wise, these aren't too bad. These, if you don't get them on sale, they only sell the screwdriver as a tool only, so then you got to buy the charger and the battery separate. I don't even know if they have a combo with a battery and a charger. It's kind of nice. You get to pick the size you want, but if you don't catch it on sale, you're going to end up paying about what you pay for the Dewalt. So my caveat with that is, if you need an RC only screwdriver and you're looking for something to kind of buy once, cry once, check out the Dewalt. Give it a good look. I'm not the only one that likes it. A lot of people do. But if you're tight on budget and you need to, kind of justify the cost, this is a really good around the house drill / screwdriver. It'll drill holes for putting anchors into walls. It'll run screws into 2x4s. Not super well, but it does a pretty good job. The clutch is decent on it. It doesn't go quite low enough for my liking for RC, but it's a really nice kind of multi-purpose use screwdriver, and it's definitely one I would recommend. I've had it for about 1.5 years now, and have had no issues. I just have the one battery. The charger charges it pretty quickly, and yeah, it's been good for me. Fun fact, I usually have a 2.5 driver chucked up in this or in here, or a quick change drill bit, like an 1/8 inch or so, maybe smaller. If I need to do a little clearancing, or I'm doing a build that has a lot of both 2.0 and 2.5, I can just switch back and forth and don't have to switch bits. All right, so moving on from kind of electronics-based stuff. In the last video, we talked about that kind of multi-tip driver, like hand driver. An electric screwdriver is great, but you also need to have some quality hand tools, at least ones that are good enough to get you by. Now, like I said, the last one we looked at that Duratrax kind of multi-tip kit. I also had some of the smaller ones. They're great for pocket-sized, but you need to have some dedicated size drivers, especially at this point. So inside this bag, this is actually out of my truck, but I have some of these HRB drivers, and these are from Amazon. And I have all sorts. I've got nut drivers in here. I've also got metric drivers, and I've got some standard in there as well, just in case I need them. So I got 1.5 all the way up to 3.0, your 4 major sizes. I've got the standard big sizes, and 4.0, 5.5, 7, and 8 in the nut driver as well. The nut drivers are pretty low profile as well, so I'm not sure if the 8 will work on Vanquish trucks. By the time I got Vanquish trucks, I had upgraded, but these are pretty good for the field. I don't ever have to worry about them. They can sit in my truck. If I forget to lock the doors and they get stolen, I'm out a lot less money. But if you're just moving up from the interchangeable kit or interchangeable bits and just a regular handle, these are really nice. And you could 3D print or have a friend 3D print you a little stand, have them all ready to go. Pretty much everything's going to be linked below in the description. A few things may get missed, or some of the smaller stuff I won't. You know, your shrink tube probably is not going to be linked because you can buy all sorts of different kinds, different sizes. I don't want to steer someone wrong. But I will link these down below. I will say the 1.5 is not the best. I've stripped a few 1.5s with it, not a lot. The 2.0, the 2.5, and the 3 have been really good though. And I don't think I've ever stripped them. They really good fit. So yeah, these have been good for me. And they actually do have interchangeable heads on them. So if you wanted, you could, if you wear these out, you could just pull this set screw out and replace them. And I'm not sure, but I bet some more quality tips would fit in here. And you could save money on the handles because these handles aren't bad. In addition to that Amazon set of drivers, I know Dynamite also makes a set of just dedicated size drivers. They're really affordable. I think you can only buy them individually, but they're like $5 or $6 a piece, so you get the exact sizes you need. Maybe you don't need the 3.0. Save yourself a couple bucks. I know Rudd Dog, however you say it, RUDDOG. That'll be linked down below. No experience with either of those, but they also make them, and a little bit step up in quality. You're not buying from Amazon. Rudd Dog is a pretty reputable tool company in RC. I think a lot of racers use them. So those are some other options for you as well if you kind of want to not get the baseline of this level, but get a little bit nicer stuff. A super crucial tool in building kits, doing any custom fab, especially once you get into 3D printing, is a pair of calipers. Now, I don't think these are guaranteed to any level of accuracy. This is a Harbor Freight set. This might be Amazon. I have a Harbor Freight set and an Amazon set. Powered by a little like 2032 coin style battery. Those are pretty affordable and they're pretty easy to find, and the battery lasts a really long time. It'll get down to the 100th of a millimeter or the 1/1000th of an inch, which is pretty small. Yeah, measuring lengths. There's a lot of instruction manuals for kits that aren't to scale. This is really nice to have, especially when you're first starting out, and maybe you can't eyeball a 10 mil and a 12 mil and the difference without having them next to each other. Maybe the link size isn't written on them or anything like that. Give them a measure. This is also great to check your link length. Make sure you didn't over tighten your rod ends, things like that. When you're getting into like custom fabrication and you need to measure exact width or exact measurements for integrating into a chassis or an existing part, not having to drill holes or anything like that, you can just use existing holes that are there. These are really handy. Like I said, 3D printer is only so accurate. These are only so accurate. These are definitely more accurate than a 3D printer, but powerful tool, comes in handy. $10 to $15 for a pretty cheap set, maybe even cheaper at Harbor Freight. But definitely get yourself a pair of calipers. You will thank me at some point if you do not have it. Don't use a ruler. Don't use a tape measure. They're just not accurate enough. Something I probably should have put in the last video was shock pliers. These are pretty life-changing. Even if you're not coming from the beginner level, even if you've been in the hobby for a while and you do not have these, get a pair. They're super versatile. They're extremely useful. Most often than not, I use them for everything but building shocks, but they're also really handy for that. Quick little walkthrough. So they only open about that far, and they obviously close. There's a little kind of nipple thing here and a hole here, and that's for popping out rod ends on shocks or on links. And that's really handy because sometimes those rod ends can be in there really, really tight. You can use it to insert rod ends, but there's no stopper on the back side, so you'll end up over inserting them. I actually just push them down on the workbench usually. But if you don't have a real sturdy workbench, you're using a card table or something, these will get you by. I just cover up the hole with my hand, try not to pinch myself, and try to catch them if I push them all the way through. Moving up, there's a big hole for like giant shock shafts. I don't really work on anything that big with these, so I actually use that to hold links when I build links. And we'll get to the other half of that in a minute. But you have a couple different sizes in here to hold different size shock shafts, or just different size things that you need to hold. You can get a lot of leverage on these. They're not the most comfortable. If you're doing a lot of link building or something, they will start to hurt your hand a little bit. These are from Hot Racing. I think I got these on A-Main. There's some really nice ones out there. But if you don't have any, I would at least look for one that has the rod end feature, as well as obviously the shock shaft holder. One last thing about shock pliers for the purpose of building shocks is you want a pair of these because they're designed with all these different sizes to grab your shock shaft, to thread on your rod end without twisting the shock shaft and scratching it. If you grab a shock shaft with a pair of pliers or something, it's going to eventually mar that shock shaft up. And over time, the scratches, the little burrs that are kind of microscopic on there, are going to eat away at those gaskets, those O-rings, and you're going to get leaky shocks, which is not fun. So moving right along, we're talking about building kits, maybe changing out bodies, and you need some stuff to work with Lexan. So one of the first things I suggest is a body reamer. And if you don't have one of these, you need to get one. If you're doing drill bits or a hot screwdriver, you're asking to either ruin your body or run a hot screwdriver into your hand. Yeah. So a body reamer is an extremely sharp reamer. It's sharpened on each side. It's got a really, really fine end on it. The nice thing is you can, you don't have to push very hard and it'll get started into a piece of Lexan. And then you just twist, put a little bit of pressure on it, and it'll slowly eat away. Take your time and do some test fits, and you can get them exact sizes for your body post holes, or if you need to cut holes for something else. This is from Apex. I got this off Amazon. It's not the best, I don't think. The ergonomics aren't very comfortable. They make ones that have a little bit fatter end on them that are rubber. Sometimes with thicker Lexan body, you do have to push kind of hard. And you're running the risk as you're supporting the Lexan body, if you're not careful, of sticking it into your hand. So this isn't without its dangers. So be careful, especially if you're a kid. Just be mindful. Sharp objects should not be played with. Got stuff falling out of my toolbox. Next up, and actually came in the same kit as that body reamer, is a set of Lexan scissors. So again, this is from Amazon. Apex is the brand. I've had these for a while. I don't think they're very good. I've never used any other Lexan scissors. They get the job done. I would like them to be a little sharper. Sometimes when you get on a corner of Lexan where the mold is, things start to get a little bit thicker, and these kind of struggle. This is a curved pair. I also have a straight pair. Just pros and cons, being able to cut some corners or cut perfectly straight lines. But I actually really like the curved pair for most applications, and you can cut a straight line with it as well. If you just take your time, you can use Lexan scissors to cut bodies out. My preferred method is to cut. A lot of times when you get a body and it's not pre-cut, it kind of has a lip at the bottom from where they vacuum mold it. I like to cut that lip off at least, get things close with the scissors, and then I will actually come in with a hobby knife, a really sharp hobby knife, and score the exact line I need. And if you just work it back and forth, it'll snap. You get a lot cleaner lines that way. But if you use this and you get jagged lines, just use a little bit of sandpaper, clean up the exact edge of the Lexan body, and you're good. I actually saw on a forum the other day, some guy said that he paints and then cuts out bodies. Don't do that because you're going to scratch the heck out of your paint job as you're trying to cut things out. All right, I promise that there's another use for the Shockshaft Pliers, and I'm going to demonstrate it right now while also demonstrating another tool. So this is my Ryobi. You guys saw a little sneak peek of this in the last video. This was actually the first drill I bought for the purpose of RC. It's not very good for it. I don't recommend it, but I already paid for it, threw the box away, all that, and needed another use for it. And originally I was going to use it to do like drilling holes, things like that. It's not great for that either. It's very slow. But what I use it for is it permanently has one of these TGH Rod End tools chucked up in it. And what it is, it's got a couple different cross sections in there for you to insert some different size rod ends. A lot of the rod ends, especially for crawlers, you can get in there with the actual pivot balls in there, which is really nice. If you forget, put them in, and then you're like, oh, I got to build the links. Usually you can do it in there. All right, so we're going to give you a quick demo of how to build links like a pro. So we're zoomed in a little bit. I just want to give you guys a little bit better view of this. If you've never seen this, or you probably have, but maybe you haven't. So you hold your link in here. I wouldn't do this with shocks. You're going to run the risk of marring them up anyway. But for links, this is huge. Shocks are usually only putting 4 rod ends on, which isn't too bad. But anyways, you hold your link in the shock pliers, or you could use vice grips for this as well. You're definitely going to scratch the link, but that's all right. And then you use this TGH Rod End Tool, and this one, like I said, it will fit over even though there's a pivot ball in there. And just go nice and slow, and it's done. Fully threaded on. Didn't kill my wrists, nothing like that. Spin it around, do the other side, and you're ready to go. So one thing I don't have, and I'm actually looking to get, is the Szczerba Tool. Put the spelling down below. There's a lot of letters in it. I don't remember how it's spelled, never do. But it's basically just a 3D printed kind of T-handle, and it's designed to fit a rod end in it. So you can hold one rod end in it, start it, get it threaded with your link, get the other link threaded, and use your TGH tool, your drill, and that at the same time. And you can actually thread both of them on at the same time. Going to save you a ton of time. You'll be done building links in 5 minutes probably, which is way better than doing them all by hand. So next up is you're upgrading your RCs, or you're building a kit. You could use the stuff that comes in the kit, but when it comes to like chemicals, I actually prefer a couple different kinds, and it makes things a lot easier. It will actually make things better. So for first, we're going to talk about grease. In the last episode, if you have a kit, or someone can give you some kit grease, it works okay. But I pretty much only use, this is from Cow RC. It's called Utter Butter. I hate the name of it. I get obviously the play on Cow RC, but this is a tub of waterproof grease. It holds up really well, even up to some pretty high speeds. I run it in my bashers, especially on the ring and pinion and the diffs. Does really well. A lot of people who do a lot of water running swear by it. They sell it in a little syringe as well, which I wish I would have got. But until I'm done with that, I'm not going to buy any more. I've had this for 2 or 3 years, and it's a third of the way gone. So I'm going to be an old man, and Red Cat's going to be on their Gen 14 or 15 long before I get rid of this. But it's been great for me. The next thing I swear by is, it's called green slime, and it's from Team Associated. We were just talking about building shocks. So one of the things you want to protect the most in shocks is those O-rings. And when you're building shocks from a kit, fully assembling them, you get the shock shaft, which is threaded on one end, and you have to assemble the lower cartridge, which has some O-rings, usually some spacers, maybe some washers, and you need to insert that threaded end through that lower cartridge. Green slime, a little bit of green slime on those O-rings as you're assembling the lower cartridge, and then I dip the threads in this. Give you guys a little better look at the green slime. I think they also sell it in a different form factor, but this is what I got. You get 4 ounces. It goes a long way. I still have quite a bit. So my last chemical I'm going to talk about is shock fluid. My shock fluid's kind of buried right now in my closet behind a bunch of stuff. I'm kind of reorganizing. So don't have anything to demo. I'll drop a picture here. Usually you can get a variety pack. If you're more into crawlers, I would get the lower weight variety pack, especially if your stuff tends to be on the lighter side. Team Associated makes a variety pack. Traxxas makes a variety. Kind of pick your poison there. but you can't go wrong with either. So a lot of your kits are going to come with shock fluid. Actually, I think they all do. But I haven't really liked any of them. I think they're all a little too light. A lot of them come with like 20 weight. Maybe try the kit shock oil. And if you don't like it, pick up a set of a variety pack and go a little bit heavier with it. But if you're into the bashers, big air, definitely go a little bit heavier. I wouldn't go too heavy because you need your shock to move. If you have 100 weight and we'll say a Traxxas Max, for example, it's not a super heavy truck, and you come down from 20 feet, good potential because the piston can't move through that fluid fast enough. It could blow the seals out of the shock, and then you're doing a shock rebuild, and you'll definitely need your shock pliers then. So one other thing I don't have pictured here, just didn't bring it inside, is a Rotary Tool. Kind of brand name is the Dremel, but they're all very similar. But yeah, you can go from Hyper Tough at Walmart. They make some cordless. I don't know if they make corded ones. All the way up to Dremel. Dremel makes corded and cordless. They come in handy. That's why it's kind of towards the bottom of this list, because there's not like a lot of good use cases that I can give you for it. But when you need one, you'll know it, and you'll wish that you had one if you don't. But again, you can kind of decide how much you want to spend, how much it is a priority to you, and maybe it's something you wait until you need it. All right, next up. Maybe you guys are starting to get into some really custom builds or some stuff that just wasn't intended to go together. Maybe you're doing some 3D printing, your own cross braces or battery trays, things like that. No matter what the use case, at a certain point, you're going to wish you had an assorted set of hardware. I talked about it in the last video, and I talked about just getting like something off Amazon. Those are okay. To be honest, I have no experience with them. But Team K&K kind of is the industry standard for RC. I know a lot of manufacturers use their hardware in their parts. If they include the hardware, a lot of times it's K&K bulk hardware. So what I have here is just a plain old toolbox. I'll just kind of show you how loaded I have this thing. So in the top is kind of a little bit miscellaneous, and you get 4 drawers, and they're all segmented out. And I'll get the GoPro out, and I'll show you guys a close-up of what I got here. So we're going to walk you through my assorted toolbox. You're going to get a little peek into my mild OCD. I cannot stand the catch-all bins for screws. I have those, and I almost never dig through them. Just frustrated and try to find the right thing in there. So if I'm building a kit, maybe I'm trying to go all stainless, maybe I'm trying to switch everything to screw cap, whatever the case may be, I have assorted hardware. And the hardware set I use is the Monster Bag from K&K. You get 700 pieces. You get a few of the major sizes from usually 4 or 6 millimeter in length all the way to 25 or 30 millimeter in length. So we'll start with the first one, and I'll just show a few of them, and you guys will get kind of an idea for how I have it laid out. So what you see here is I got labels up here, and it corresponds to when the lid is open. So up top is this corner, this one is middle, this corner over here, label, is to that. So what I have in here is my screw cap, and we start at 6 millimeter here, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 20. We got our 25, we got some 20 mil, and we have 30. And it doesn't seem the most logical, but I actually had the black oxide in here, and then I went and got a stainless Monster Bag as well. So behind here I have 8, 10, 12, 14, 16 in stainless, and then I have 20 stainless, and my 25 stainless is up top. Just didn't have quite enough room in here, but 25 millimeter screw, not very common. We got our cap head. I've got flat head, and the bottom is kind of miscellaneous. Different set screws. There's not much in here. Some cross pins, smaller stuff that's not, M3. I've got some M2.5. I've even got M2 in there. Then up top, we have a little bit more miscellaneous stuff. So this is where you see my catch-all. And there's some nice stuff in there. There's a lot of stainless hardware, but I just don't like digging through it. So your K&K is going to come with a bunch of lock nuts. So I just put them all in one little bin so I can find them. I also ordered their spacer kit. You get a bunch of different spacers. And they give you size sheets with everything. My dogs are going crazy in the background. So you can use those sizes. You don't need a label maker to start out. But yeah, all sorts of different sizes. 3 mil, 6 mil, 8 mil. I think there's some 2 mil in here. Yep, some 2 mil. Got some of the really long stuff. 30 mil, 25 mil. The socket head. Just got some random like kingpin type screws. I got some zip ties in here. This kind of catches a lot of things. There's some 6 mil stainless. But yeah, that setup has been really, really nice. It allows me to, exactly where to find whatever it is I'm looking for. I don't have to hunt. And yeah, it'll be a long time before I need anything. He also sells the individual sizes. So yeah, so you can just kind of buy the replacements as you need them. And it's quite a bit more affordable. A monster bag of hardware, I think, is in the 30s. Maybe it's $40. But you're going to be pretty well off for a while. So one of the last categories I'm going to talk about is kind of a miscellaneous category. And I'll start off with picks. I have an assortment of picks here, all of which I got at Harbor Freight. So I've got your standard dental pick. Everyone should be familiar with that. These are pretty malleable. So they're not the most sturdy. They bend pretty easily. But I also have this set with a little bit nicer handle. These are pretty sturdy. I use these most often if I'm doing like a brass swap on an axle or just a full axle swap. These are really nice to pull bearings out. You can usually get them underneath the bearing, and these ones are sturdy enough you can actually pry the bearing out. Last thing kind of for the miscellaneous is a file. This is just an 8-inch tapered file, Harbor Freight again. You don't need anything crazy good. I have a rat tail file in the garage as well. That's already been added to my brazing metalworking kit. But yeah, it's this is pretty nice. If you need to do some clearancing, you don't have a Dremel yet, or maybe you don't. Maybe your Dremel is in the garage. You can just knock the edges off something with this. Sandpaper works as well. So my last thing really teeters into kind of that advanced level toolkit, and there's multiple different tiers, multiple different categories, but we're talking about 3D printers. 3D printer is something that I didn't have until about a year ago, and it is a game changer. If you're missing something, a cross member, a body mount, with a little bit of practice, you can get in 3D. A 3D design software. Tinkercad is web-based. It's definitely not the most advanced. People who do CAD for a living don't like Tinkercad usually, but it's fairly user-friendly, and you can do some pretty cool designs on there and generate STL files and print your own designs. Additionally, Thingiverse, things like that, where people, it's like a free hosting service for STL design files. I don't really suggest using 3D printed parts for things that are, structurally integral to your chassis or your build. They're naturally kind of brittle, especially PLA. Be careful with PLA. It's a sugar-based filament, and it actually becomes quite gooey and kind of melts in like really hot sun. It's not very good against water or moisture. If you have to use 3D printed parts, try to print something like PLA Plus or PETG. If you need it to be structural, I would just send the file to someone, like a SLS printer, have it printed. It's going to come out way better anyway. A lot of aftermarket chassis, skid plates, things like that, you'll see in SLS printing, and those do pretty well. The nice thing about 3D printed parts, if you're just trying to prototype something, maybe you run it for a while, it breaks, redesign it. It's cheap. A spool of nice filament is $20, $25. But You know, there's lots of different 3D printers. The most popular is probably the Ender 3 from Creality. I don't have any experience with it. The one thing I will say is if you're starting to get to the point where you want to look at a 3D printer, I've seen a lot of horror stories. I was doing a lot of research before I bought one, and a lot of people's horror stories come from the leveling of the bed. Apparently the Creality, you know, as long as you get it set and it stays in one place and you get it nice and level manually, they'll do you good for a long time. They run well, get pretty good prints off of them. Some people have really good luck with them and other people don't. You can go all the way up to, you know, $1,000 plus printers. And I'm talking about FDM printers. I have no experience with resin printers. You can get some really nice scale detail stuff, but it's pretty brittle. But yeah, we won't get into the printer I have until the next video because I think it is kind of in that advanced level. Budget, it's not the most friendly to everybody, but give a 3D printer a hard thought if you don't have one. Check out some videos, see what some people have designed up, people have built. If you go back and you watch my cliffhanger video, I'll link that here. You'll see a quick glimpse of a 3D printed battery tray. I think that was the first thing that I designed up on my own. Very simple. Printed it out. I think it took 2 tries. That's just one use case. And there's tons of others. I have 3D printed bumpers for, you know, SDX 24s that aren't going to see a whole lot of use. They're really convenient. You don't have to worry about finding exact parts for what you need. You can make your own. With that being said, this is a really long video. I appreciate you guys that made it to the end. Comment down below if I missed anything, if there's anything you would add to kind of that core intermediate level RC enthusiast toolbox, and if there was anything that I had in the video that maybe you hadn't thought of and that you're looking into now. So before you go, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment, even if you're just saying hi, and I will see you guys on the next one. Thanks.